Welcome to the Vertical Cafe podcast, where community connects through coffee and conversation. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Vertical Cafe podcast. I've got Rod Profrock to my left, and I will introduce our guest here today, Scott Gardner. He is a lifelong resident of Warsaw, New York, and the dynamic president and CEO of Wyoming County Chamber of Commerce. Scott has deep roots in our community, and that, along with his passion for local development, have been instrumental in fostering economic growth and tourism. From boating on Silver Lake to enjoying meals at the Glen Iris Inn, Scott embodies the spirit of Wyoming County. Join us today as we explore his journey, insights, and the initiatives that continue to propel our community forward.
Wow. Very nice.
We had ChatGPT make that for you. So
I thought you wrote it.
No.
Okay.
I fancy myself a bit of a writer, but
I thought you and Scott got together and
ChatGPT is sitting over here.
yeah, he's the fourth person.
The fourth person.
Anything that you care to correct in that, or
No, I love being dynamic. I love eating at the Glen Iris, and I wish I did more boating on Silver Lake. I usually don't have enough time.
you and me both, Scott.
Right. We've seen
Well,
each other at the
Yeah.
dock.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
yeah. So there's a lot. We usually start early life. Would you like to?
Yeah. Why don't we just go ahead and start with your genesis of life, where you were born, where you grew up, and how you ended up planted here in good old Warsaw, New York.
Sure. Well, most of my family is from here, which is easily how I got here then. Born at Wyoming County Community Hospital, proudly, I guess. And my grandfather, grandmothers, all that were from Wyoming County. Grew up on farms up on the West Hill. And many of the cousins and things still do that. They're in farming still. And fortunately, I'm related to lots of people in Wyoming County. And my grandfather, my mother's father, met my grandmother in Massachusetts and brought her back here. So, there's no marrying cousins or anything that. That's a good thing because. True story, one of my great aunts actually married her, I think, second cousin, and they both had the same last name, so they didn't have to change their last names.
Oh, that's convenient.
Her, she didn't. So, very convenient.
In one way.
In one way, yeah. Brings the family together.
Yeah, for sure.
But great people. So, we had, our family had businesses here. My grandfather started the Awaka Deli down in South Warsaw in 1974 and ran that. He was also the director of Upstate Milk, so
Okay.
This was his side gig, I guess, back before people had side gigs. Industrious people, hardworking people, so it was very natural for him to do that. And my grandmother, the nurse at Manor Oak, and and in the community, so. Growing up, we all kind of lived near each other. I mean, I grew up on Jefferson Street over in Warsaw. And my grandmother was on Cottage Court. My other grandmother was up at the top of Jefferson Street, and my uncles were on Liberty Street, and the rest were up on the hill. So it was great, growing up in the 70s, 80s here as a kid because, safe community. We could, the park was right up the street. So, my mother was fine letting us ride our BMX bikes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Very cool. And we'd go up to the park and swimming lessons and, arts and crafts. And so it was a great growing up here in Warsaw because, again, it was safe and we knew everybody and family was everywhere, and everyone kind of watched out for everyone's kids. And so it really had to be good because also everyone was watching out for everyone's kids. And, mom would know that you did something bad before you got home. So that was a good thing, and I reflect on growing up in Warsaw, and it was I'm lucky. I think I was to grow up here, and then, we had the business right. It's where Boss Hair and Nail is now, and So being able to go there and work, well, I mean, we had to because that's what you do when you have family that owns businesses, and you work on holidays and you work when everybody else is having fun. But, it never, I look back on it and it never was work. It was just time with family.
Yeah.
And we had fun. I mean,
Sure.
the funny stories and things that happened and the people that and get to know in the community for all those years. And my father worked at Montgomery's building supplies right down around the corner on the other street. So, I mean, again, everybody was around so that it was, again, a safe place to be, and we could kind of roam the streets and, but it was a good growing up. Being able to get an early work ethic and, again, everybody worked hard and we had fun and had good lives and, so I like I say, I'm lucky to have grown up here.
Did you grow up here too?
No, I did not. I did not. But so you went to Warsaw Central School.
I'm a Tiger.
You are a Tiger.
Yeah, Warsaw Tiger.
What year did you graduate?
92.
92. Okay.
92. So,
All right. Very good.
Yeah.
I did too. I'm a
Did ya?
92er. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it was a good year.
Good year.
It was a good year. What year?
Wow.
Or what school?
I went to Oakfield up till
Okay.
10th, and then I finished in Batavia.
Batavia. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So we couldn't even be rivals at that
no,
point. You're too
no,
far away.
No. Yeah. And you have siblings.
I have one brother.
Okay.
Yep. And he's still in Warsaw. He's here.
Yeah.
Yep. And he's like 4 years younger than me. But
4 years younger.
he graduated from Letchworth.
Okay.
Eventually, because we had moved out of Warsaw for a short period of time, lived in Cast Island. I continued going to school here because I didn't want to leave in my junior year, I think.
So Sean is
Sean
your brother.
is my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know Sean well in the
Right.
family.
Right.
And so did you guys, being he was 3-4 years younger than you, did you guys pal around when you were younger?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, our friends were, we had neighborhood friends and kids, and like our neighbor was Pete Hoffmeister, the chief of police here in Warsaw, and so again, small tight knit communities, everybody knew everybody, and we did we played, I always think we laugh back on it now that like Army, we knew that, and I don't know how we
Sean
ended up,
still plays Army.
he still does, you know him,
Yeah, I do, yeah.
he still yes.
Yeah,
He still
100%,
does.
yeah.
It was just really kind of funny. But we
awesome.
did, we had all this like surplus Army stuff.
Yeah.
Beret, I always had a beret, and I fancied myself after, was it George Papard on the original A-Team?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
I always had to have black gloves and something fake as a cigar,
yeah.
and we'd find the weirdest things to turn into Army tanks and like old riding lawnmowers and things like that, I mean,
That's amazing.
So growing up in the 80s and early 90s, being born in the 70s, culture was a lot different back then. Do you see the community shift at all? Is it a little bit different from when you were growing up to what it is now as you look into, the village, you see the kids out running around and doing what you used to do?
I don't see as many out. I think, so we were one of these probably one of the last generations that grew up without cell phones and personal computers, right? Like, we didn't have that in the house. We still had to rotary dial a friend, and we only called people, I guess, if there was hot gossip, but to make arrangements to meet up.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and so we had no, my first cell phone was a bag phone in like 93, big, heavy. I thought I was cool with a bag phone.
Oh, yeah.
It was like 1 full watt of power, and you could call no one. But I had one,
It looked cool.
It looked cool, right? But I think, so we were left to our own devices in that sense. There was there was Saturday morning cartoons, and screen time was, we'd watch HBO when no one was looking, and but otherwise.
You had to get up and change the station.
Oh yeah, we had
still
to
at
get
that
up,
point.
and there
The
was
box.
a dial.
Yeah.
We had a dial.
Whack it to get
on the
reception.
TV. Yeah. Oh yeah, and I thought it was so cool when I got my. So my parents had a small 13-inch black and white TV in the kitchen. That was big deal. I remember MTV, black and white MTV, right?
Yes.
And then, when we got the bigger TV, the little one, I had a TV in my room. That
Dude.
Big time.
big time, black and white, but it was a TV. And then eventually I got a phone in my room. And so, I mean, these things that kids today, I don't think they have any idea. I mean, they can watch full movies on their phone.
Yeah.
I mean, we couldn't watch a movie unless it was on,
Right.
So,
And it was neat. You talked about hopping on your BMX and just riding around town.
Yeah.
It's really cool that you're one of the, I think you're the only guest that was actually born and raised in the village of Warsaw. We've had a few that have come from
we had Al on recently. And
Yeah.
his group was born in Brazil? Or
Brazil,
Yeah.
California, then made his way here. And
He's a
then
neat story. Yeah.
Tammy was from Long Island.
Yes.
Yep.
Ken
And
Tangle
Ken
was
also.
from Long Island. So,
Okay.
so it's kind of neat to be able to speak with somebody that actually was born here in Warsaw, raised here in Warsaw, and is still part of the community here in Warsaw, and that actually cares about the community and the growth of the community here in Warsaw.
Well, and I remember things in Warsaw that maybe people that weren't here do not remember. I remember before Walmart was down there, that plaza did not exist at one time, right? That was fields. I remember when our main street had men's and women's clothing stores, stationery stores, women, like I said, a women's clothing store, a candy store at one time. I mean, small bakeries. I mean, it was before I hate to say it's not necessarily the Walmart effect, but the world changing that we did have so much more small businesses, and they supported people. I mean, you're a small business owner, right? I mean, I remember, Sunderland's men's store, and then Mr. Sunderland lived over on the other street over here. I mean, these people were part of the community. They weren't sort of nameless, faceless corporations. I mean, you knew who they were and where they lived, and, you'd see them out and about. And
Is it possible to bring that back to a community?
I think
after it's left,
it's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard after a long stretch. I mean, and the world changed here everywhere. Pretty quickly with online ordering and all that. But I think people still have to remember. Again, growing up in small business, I know how important it is, and it's jobs for kids. It's it's all sorts of things, and the small businesses are the ones that support. Every nonprofit that comes in and says, "Can we get a donation?"
Yes,
and you get them, and the small businesses want to, but in turn, people need to understand that you got to support those small businesses to make those donations.
Sure,
like it is a virtuous cycle, that we've all got to consciously protect, and promote. And I think, because Amazon is not going to donate to the Warsaw Junior Tigers, right? So we just have to be very conscious about, how we, if this is that community that we want to live in, right? We have to help support it and create it.
I want to go back, speaking about small businesses, I want to go back to the business that your family started. So tell us a little bit about that. You said your grandmother and grandfather?
So, yeah, they originally started it, and then my mother and my aunt ran it for a while, and then my aunt ended up being the sole owner of it. And she and my uncle owned Bud's Deli too. Okay. So we had like the monopoly on delis, in Warsaw at one time.
And what was the one called over here where Boss Hair and Nails?
That was a Wackadeli and Bake Shop named after the street.
What could you get in when you went in there? What was up for sale?
So originally it was, we had the largest selection of magazines, newspapers, in the whole community. I mean,
we were like the internet.
We were like the internet. I mean, I remember as an aside, I remember, so we sold all kinds of magazines. Picture, if you will, what they were.
Sure.
And back in the 80s, the moral majority and all that, we actually were protested at one time on Channel 7 because we were a store that sold,
Sure.
I forget, like Penthouse and things like that. They're top shelf, wrapped in brown paper, but people still came in for it. You know what I mean? So it was a wild time. And now, I don't know if you could go in, very few stores in town have any magazines, and just a few newspapers. And we had, the Buffalo Evening News. I think you can still get the New York Times, the Democrat and Chronicle. I mean, the local. There've been different local newspapers over the years, but so we had all of that. huge candy selection, rows and rows of penny candies and things, and then grocery items, beer pop, drinks, and then deli items. So we had, fresh deli. You could come in and get cold cuts.
Oh yeah.
Things like that, salads.
And were you slicing it in the back?
No, we sliced it right up front.
Right up front.
Yeah,
Go
so
in
we
and
had,
get
it was, you could see it. You'd point in the deli case that you want.
Give
Just
me
like
some
now you
pastrami.
Yeah,
some
pastrami.
capicola.
Yeah.
We had these buckets of oysters. Honest to God, it looks like a pail of snot. But people would come in. I mean, you had loyal customers that would come in weekly because they'd come in fresh, and they'd come in and get their like those little Chinese takeout containers. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's
okay,
but that's what they're called.
Yeah.
And they're paper containers, and we'd fill them up, and I'm like, ooh, gosh. So and then we opened up a bakery. So in the back there was a bakery, so there were fresh baked goods.
Okay.
That was before we got into like the real subs and pizzas and all that. So my mom did that. So I remember getting up at like 3:00 in the morning, and going over with my mother and sleeping under a counter. And I was young enough I could make coffee and get everything set up for the store, or help her. I remember filling jelly donuts.
Okay.
Nice.
You carefully slide it on and just enough so it doesn't explode, But we did that for many years. And then again, economies changed, things changed. We got out of the deli business, and then my aunt ended up putting in the 1 hour photo lab in the back of the store. So she had to invest in, these big machines that 35 millimeter rolls have to go through all the chemicals, and then you have to put it through this other machine, and you print the pictures, and they all come out like a little assembly line. And it was really neat. Again, I was a later teenager when we were doing that, so I could work in there too. And that was, again, a learning experience, and it was fun. And it was, I don't know if I should say this or not. It was always interesting. People never really understood that we were actually seeing their pictures. So there's probably lots of people now that they're long gone, but you'd bring in a roll of film and you want an hour, and we'd run it through, we'd package it, put it in that neat envelope, and then it'd come up, and sometimes the stuff we saw, it'd come in and be like, here's your pictures, because it's not, in your phone now, you can take pictures of everything. Nobody prints anything anymore, but no one else sees your pictures.
Right.
We did.
Yeah.
And we did all
Nobody
the
sees them that we know.
Well, right.
Yeah.
Unless
the NSA's.
It's not like you can just tear them up now and throw them in the garbage.
the digital trail. Who knows?
Yeah, right. But isn't that something people would? The new thing was the 1 hour Photoshop.
It was a
like,
big deal.
You wanted to get your pictures right away.
Yeah.
Like you took it there, and it was so exciting. In 1 hour, you could go back and just there it is.
You had pictures.
Bam.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
It was.
I'm fascinated by just the idea of like a small grocery store, because we just had Perry Market announce that they're closing. I think they're still like kind of running out of inventory, but and I was just thinking, like, there's got to be something that you can do, because it's so convenient. Like what they offer is different than Family Dollar across the street. They have some deli components and even some magazines, but they can't compete with Walmart and Wegmans in Geneseo or Walmart here. And so it's like Walmart is obviously an aggregation of all these smaller business models. But yeah, it's fascinating to think of even just like something the size of Vertical Cafe, but being operated as a grocery store, just to meet a few needs. Pick the top 20 needs that people have, and
you had multiple small groceries in some of these communities at one time. I mean, we had where the Dollar General is in Warsaw was a Big M. It was a small
I do remember that.
grocery store. And it was for older people or something quick or running, and then they had a deli too that you could run in and get just about anything.
And a lot of those, like a Big M, it was franchised. So a lot, the owner typically lived in the community where Big M was, and maybe they owned a couple of them or whatever. But and that was the small town feel. You could go in and you could actually, the owner was also
around.
the operator and was around. And so I think that's important. But now you have, I'm sorry.
No, just in like a big city, I think you have, I was thinking of like hyper-specific groceries, like you have not necessarily a Whole Foods, but they do find themselves in, like I went to one in Chicago. but you wouldn't have like a Walmart there. That's more like in the suburbs per se. And
Right,
then you've
right.
got like, your Chinese grocery store. We've got all the, or Asian.
Very specific, yeah.
And
Yep.
that's interesting to me. But then in a community like Warsaw, you might have, let's say 15 families that would be willing to go there occasionally, probably not 100% of the time.
Right.
And so I think everything's changed from then, when maybe everybody's having a ham and cheese sandwich for lunch or whatever, or something like that,
Right.
to now that you could go 30 minutes to Batavia and have your pick of any different cuisine. And
I think people are more mobile. They don't. People think nothing of just driving over to Batavia or running over to Geneseo, or and I think it's funny because even growing up, I mean, we didn't just go over to Batavia for dinner. I mean, or to go to a super Walmart, or we wouldn't have done that. People didn't do that.
Yeah.
We bought everything here. We stayed here. And because you watch it growing up. If you're going to go to the movies, before, Spotlight's here, and they do an excellent job of getting first run movies. Our theater, you get it a few weeks or a month after
dollar theater kinda.
the ones up in Rochester. So as a kid, we'd get a whole bunch of people together and we'd drive up there to see a movie if you really wanted to see it. But obviously this is before streaming and you could get that, but that was a big deal. Like, you didn't just go to Rochester to watch just a movie. I mean, we'd also go to the mall, and you got to make something out of it. And and I think, well, gas prices aren't that different proportionally now than they were then. I don't know what it was, but it was new.
Yeah.
Too. It was different. That was the thing to do. And now look at malls are drying up and closing, and because I went up to Henrietta the other day and I didn't realize it, that what was the Marketplace Mall is now a big healthcare center.
Yes.
Dude.
Right?
Yes.
It's beautiful and all that, but
Yeah.
I mean, that was the place to go. In the Walden Galleria, you go to Buffalo, and those were, I remember when they were built, right? And I worked at it for a while. As you looked in my my information.
Yes.
And that was a big deal. It was packed, and now it's like a ghost town.
Yeah, that's the case all over the place. I lived in South Carolina for a year, and the mall there was like obviously ginormous, super center where everybody can go.
Yep.
But it's so interesting. You were making me think. I know this story of the Amish community when cars became sort of ubiquitous. They had a debate, and they do this for every new technology, whether or not to, and maybe it's not Amish, I might be getting this wrong, not that maybe they would be listening, but like, so it's an interesting technique of taking in, they let the general population take in the new technology, they observe the effects, and then they decide whether or not they want to incorporate it into their lifestyle. They're not totally against new technology, they just don't want to be the first adopters. And so it's super interesting because all these different things we brought up, malls, movie theaters, grocery stores, Main Street in small town USA, there are degenerative effects of all these innovations that we've adapted our lives to. And so even just the mobility of a family, how does that affect the commerce in a small town? Like, everybody would say, well, everybody's happier. You get to choose whatever you want to do on a given Friday night, But then the sort of second order effect of that is you don't hang out with your neighbors as much. You don't know the people that you don't know where they live, the people that you're eating at the restaurant with, and
it's true.
So there's all these second order effects that I think wisely the Amish community is sort of avoiding. They might not be the perfect.
They take but they take a slower approach,
and it's just two ends of the spectrum.
We just ram into everything. Right?
Yes,
it's the newest, the latest, the greatest. We're doing it all the time,
right.
And then we realize later, or just we get bored with it, or the trend changes, and now we're turning malls into housing centers because housing's an issue. So you're turning them into senior centers, and so you're like repurposing. And it's like, well, it had a time, and now we prefer. And there is, I guess, some trending to coming back to small communities, small, shopping, more niche, because I can get, say, the things that I probably wouldn't get locally from Amazon. I can get anything I want. But I do like going into a local business because then all of a sudden I see people.
Yeah.
What a novel idea.
Yeah.
And I go, oh yeah, you're Rod. You live down the street over here. And well, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so there is some movement to go back to this downtown retail environment that we kind of lost. And, because we went through and it's just 20, 30-year cycles. You're kind of watching it, and that's kind of the way we are. It's like generational change is going, now, and I just think it's funny because now you're old enough to watch that cycle happen that, your millennials and younger people are going, oh, isn't it neat to shop in the downtown? And, and I'm like,
yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's just what we should do, right? That's what we always did. But they want to start up a business and they want to get into that, and they're doing it their way, which is again how communities were built and formed, right? Yeah. So if that's what helps rebuild our downtowns, so be it, right? We just have to be ready and capable to do it, and help and find a new way, because there's always something new. There's always something different. Yeah. So
yeah. And so you have a certain passion for community, and also you've been involved over the years in government and politics. How do those two things come together?
And how did you get into it? I might add, just maybe start there.
Okay. Well, so I was a nerdy kid that really liked politics at an early age. And it isn't something that I just one day said, ooh, I want to do this. It's something growing up around people, and people coming in and people always talking about politics, and it's our stores or wherever. And I had a family full of people that were willing to express their ideas, so which is good. I think we should, right? And I kind of got a bug for it. I think it was '85, and I was wearing 3-piece suits to school and carrying an attaché case, which can render you the subject of getting locked in lockers and things like that. But
the attaché case?
No, it wouldn't fit.
Oh yeah.
So
we call them man purses now, right?
No. This was a briefcase or an attaché.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a man purse. I did not wear it slung across me.
Gotcha.
I was not that hip. No. I carry, But I remember it was Ronald Reagan's, it'd be second election, because he was elected in the early 80s, and then it was his re-election, and I got really involved, and my grandmother allowed me to want to express this, as a little young Republican, and took me to campaign headquarters over in Batavia. We went one day, and I was able to fill up and get pencils and stickers and all this stuff, and I just thought it was cool. And then I remember debating in, I think it was 5th grade, and one classmate played the opposition, and I played the Reagan character, and then I won the debate, and then he won the election, and it's like, oh wow, this is real. I did it. I helped Ronald Reagan, I'm sure in some way, and there's a level of excitement to it, and so I followed it and stayed involved with it, off and on through volunteering for campaigns or helping people or whatever, because politics is people. Politics is ideas. Politics is, helping communities, and it's trying to make our country better. I mean, politics is not a dirty word. A lot of people, I don't want to talk about politics. Well, you are a participant in the United States. You should vote. It's a duty. It's one of the few things that that as a country as great as ours asks you to do. And I think that we should have an active populace that's interested in paying attention, right? So
building something.
That's the founding principles of this country. I mean, we took an idea. We had a reason for coming here. We took an idea of various, peoples that came together, formed a very simplistic document, really, but they were smart people. I mean, far better read than most of the people probably in Washington today. Yeah. And came up with a governing document and an idea that they put into place, and they all believed it, and they moved forward with it, and and we've been able to do it. What, next year, 250 years now, and we're still a young country by comparison to places like, England or France but we have something unique in the United States that we've always been able to kind of pick ourselves up. We can change, but we never lose, and we can't lose those kind of founding ideals or that core of what we are, because if we do, this can all be lost. I mean, they say democracy is only, one generation away from, despotism.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to protect it and defend it and preserve it. And it's very exciting to be a part of that process.
Yeah.
And elections are processes. They're not bad things. Like, we should get involved. People should be actively paying attention. And I know a lot of people don't. They'd rather just watch TV or but you really need to, because if you don't, other people will. And I don't always think that other people have the right ideas about where we should go or what we should be. So you have to get involved. And I was given, I always had been involved. I was a town Republican chairman at the age of 19, and I did that for almost 18 years. And so I was hosting fundraisers, helping candidates, things like that. And so you get to know people, and I was hosting a fundraiser. And again, it's people I was hosting a fundraiser with the Warsaw Committee for Senator Volker at the time. And a candidate that was running for the state assembly, for Dan Burling, he was friends with my orthodontist, who was the chair of the Genesee County Legislature also at the time. He was a rear admiral, really cool guy, Roger Trifthauser, which, if you're from Batavia, maybe knew Roger.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Was he a doctor by chance?
He was an orthodontist.
Orthodontist, yeah.
Yep. So he had a practice right on Main Street, and it was Dr. Salmon has taken over that practice. So, going there, fourth grade, I think I started. I spent far too long in dental appliances than I should have, I think.
So you're walking in school with dental appliances,
Oh, yeah.
your little sachet,
retainers, and braces,
your suit on,
and I was a target.
you
for,
were.
I was just, I mean, it's total sign,
But you got great teeth.
but I have great teeth.
Yeah.
Was Scott like, I don't know who that is? Your brother. Was your brother like,
Sean.
Sean, I'm sorry, Sean.
Sean was very, he's different than I am. And he was much more sporty and, or I guess that's not the right word. It's probably sports oriented than I was. I mean, I liked debate, and I liked school.
You liked the inside of a locker. We got you.
It's a dark and quiet place to contemplate your existence.
Where's Scott?
I've been here. Tap,
He's
tap,
happy-
tap,
happy
right.
place.
Somebody let me out.
Oh, that's great. That's great that you can laugh about it.
Oh,
though, and make fun of
and
it,
that's the thing. You go through school, and people bully you, and I can tell you, if somebody wants to tell you what bullying is, I can give it. But thinking back on it, and it was like your senior year, and things changed, and kind of everybody matured very quickly, and a lot of that, I look back on it, and it's the stuff that gives you character and makes you stronger.
You know what's great though, Scott, is that you believed in what you stood for, and you didn't really back down from it. You didn't care.
Nope.
I think that's admirable.
This is who I am. This is
a lot of the kids would just kind of blend in and kind of.
No, I didn't wear jeans. I only wore khakis. I mean, I always.
And you still do. I mean, you got to be one of the best dressed men in Warsaw. I got to tell you.
Well, I finally maybe grew into it. I mean,
you got the hair going too, Scott. You got the beard.
Yeah.
You almost got a JD Vance look, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Well, he has mine.
Oh,
I mean,
he's younger.
You were way ahead of him.
He just turned 40. So
he grew up in West Virginia, so he definitely wasn't dressing like this.
Yeah. He,
Anyway, sorry, got sidetracked.
It was
there.
It was an interesting time, and a good time to, like I said, grow up. And and there's. Life is what you do with it, right? I mean, you could let it defeat you, or you could just press on.
Yeah.
Again, with the people that have come on so far, high agency is the through line. Like, you're willing to take responsibility for whatever fashion choices or interests that you have, and then make of it what you will. And rather than have everything dictated to you or wish that people would hand you opportunities tailored by that's going to be tailored by their interests, not yours. You know, like, hey, I think you would be great at my company. Like, well, maybe, or, you know, you have to bring something to the table that, like, as far as an opinion and interest, and then make it happen. If it, you know, I don't know, if there's nobody in town that shares that interest with you, then you're going to have to be the one that starts that company
or start it up. Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of our successful people are, you know, right? They set their own course, you know, and because they aren't happy with the status quo, or they want something different, or they want that independence, or whatever it is, you know, that drives a person.
And even within a corporation or anything, there's lots of people here that maybe work in the city or anything like that. Having agency is saying, like, okay, here I am at this job. Am I just going to sit around and, you know, stay at this level, or do I, like, more than just a $1 pay raise, do I want to take on more responsibility? Do I want to be a part of what is happening in this organization? You know,
and I think there's roles and room for everybody. I mean, there are some people that are just very happy doing whatever it is that they have to do, and then do their own thing, and don't want to whatever. I mean, that if that's what you're happy doing, or like, but I think there's always opportunity if you want it.
And if you're not happy, then maybe look in the direction of, like,
make a
taking
change.
some responsibility.
Right. You know, and it's not always easy.
No, never.
Change is not
never?
easy, right? I mean, but it's hard, and it can work, and it can not work.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
but
the
the
hardest
beauty
part,
is
maybe.
that and that you can. There's risk, and you can try again. Don't be defeated by, you know, a momentary
opposition or
loss, whatever
fail.
it is.
Sure.
Yeah.
And like you said, it builds character.
And it builds character,
Yeah.
and, you know, and that's that's how I ended up, you know, with the political job. Is, you know, I was very young doing something that typically much older people do, you know, and I was in the right place at the right time, just happened to meet the right people, and I was hired to come on and help run a campaign for a state assembly seat. You know, I had never done that before.
Yeah.
But I like to organize, and I like to, okay, we can do this. We'll figure it out. I mean, like so many things, you just figure it out.
You think administration is one of your gifts?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was able to I can put things together.
Yeah.
I can see what needs to be done. And then it's just sort of marshaling resources to get what you need to, and that can be used in any circumstance. And it goes all the way back, I think, to, again, growing up in small business. How do we get this done? How do we figure out, oh, this didn't work out, or we didn't get the thing, or we have to have this and we don't have that. How do we keep going? Well, we just figure it out. You know what I mean? I mean, there's always
I like
a way.
that. I like that. Just figure it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just have to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm looking at Ian because that's part of our day here. You know, we run into a fire here and there. We got to put it out and then figure it out.
Right.
You know, and so yeah.
And just, it's the willingness to be able to do that. Some people just collapse and
Yeah.
shut down, and you know, I don't think that's in us. I mean, a lot of us, I think some people do, or more people do now than they did. I don't know, but
I think it can be developed. You
but
know?
it is a right.
Yeah.
And maybe you have to figure it out so many times that you just keep figuring it out,
Yeah.
right? But if you're never challenged, then you're never going to refine the skill, right?
Yeah.
If there's never even a little bit of diversity or something that you have to overcome, you aren't going to get good at it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that anybody's super great at it, right? It's just, you just do it.
You just do it. You
know,
figure it out.
And you figure it out.
So your longest tenure was it with Dan Berling? So how did you end up with him? Let's get into that story.
So he had won a convention. It was a 6-county district, and I came on with him. He had done sort of a heavy lift to get the nomination at the time, and I came on to help him with the election piece, and then I stayed on with him as his chief of staff. I had worked previously with he was Assembly Minority Leader Tom Reynolds at the time, and I worked for him for about a year or so, and kind of got my feet wet in it, and I liked it. I liked state government's a very interesting place, especially in a state like New York. Very complex, and that's how I had some groundwork there, and I was a committeeman, and then I went to work with Dan, and that was it was fun. He was an interesting person to work for because, and as was Tom Reynolds, is neither one of them were attorneys. Dan's a pharmacist by trade. Tom was in real estate. So, and my background is a paralegal. So the assumption would I go work with attorneys. Well, I didn't want to really work for an attorney. If I wanted to be an attorney, and who knows, maybe in the future I could still do that, right? The future's unwritten. Yeah. I didn't want to work in a law office. I liked the reason I even interned initially with Assemblyman Reynolds was because I wanted to work on legislation. So it's a whole different aspect. I got a great foundation, but I wanted to work in a different realm rather than already written laws. I wanted to work on the other side. And the dynamic of that, like actually establishing policy. So was hired by him. He got elected, and then, had a 14-year run with him in the state assembly, which was really, again, cool. I mean, we went in at a time when New York had a Republican governor, so under George Pataki, and it was exciting because as a minority member in the state assembly, which can often be a dark and cold place to be, when you have the governor as the Republican, in this case, and we were in the minority, all of the state agencies work for that party, so you could get stuff done, and we got a lot of good things done over his tenure. And then after that, the governor's mansion obviously changed, but the opportunities were cool. I mean, just the things that, I got to have dinner at Gracie Mansion and, hung out with the governor of the state and, some of the people that you meet and the thing. And so, we passed laws, some good ones, like defibrillators in schools and, that really help people. The reason we were there is to help people. And again, coming from, and that's something about the ethic of it, because as you work with different people, you learn different things. And working with Dan as a small business owner, because he owned 2 pharmacies, and as a pharmacist, it was about, he was not heavily focused on the party aspect. It was about helping people. Right. Because a pharmacist helps people. I mean, you go to the local pharmacy over here on Main Street in Warsaw, and if you talk to the pharmacist, and they're helping people at some of their difficult health related times, right? I mean, so it was really great to work for somebody that their focus was about that and not politics first, right? So
even with real estate too, I don't know if you experienced that with him, but like that the people that I know that are into real estate are really into making people happy, like for a long period of time.
Well, yeah, because this is you're shepherding someone through probably the biggest purchase they're going to make of their life, right? And you want to make sure it's right, and it's about relationships, and you want to hopefully set them up for their future in a very positive way. And again, if they were happy, then they're going to share that relationship, and then you get other clients, and so it is. But it's all about people.
You would like, it is, and you would like to think that everybody gets into politics to serve others. That would be the great hope, but not everybody does that. There are some selfish motives involved,
right?
But so it sounds like Dan had a servant's heart, and he got involved in the political arena, and he was the assemblyman for
the 147th district here. So we had 6 counties at one time, and then after redistricting, we had 4 counties.
Okay,
so,
gotcha.
It was a lot of. It's funny because you think, well, we're all Western New Yorkers, but every county's different.
Yeah,
the people in every community are different.
Wayne County, that's where I grew up.
Yep.
Very different.
Very different. And you think, and that's what's remarkable about, again, a big picture about our country is that, you can have 4 different counties, 6 different counties, and one part of the state very different than another part of a state. It's very interesting how yet we all
there's
coalesce.
Yeah, and there's so many layers to the government. You know, we're considered what, the constituents? Is that what you call us, right? And you are employed by us, and so you go to us to find out what our needs are, so that you can take it to the government, the Senate, right, House, Congress,
whatever you're representing,
Well, right.
You know, and you're to represent the broadest interests of the people that you're representing. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you're there. That's the beauty of the Republican form of government that we have, representative democracy.
Yeah.
It's the founding fathers had that great wisdom that we select someone from us to go and represent us in a body of then representatives that then have to figure it out.
And that is
working
so
with each other.
important. And that's why like you said before, to your point, we should be interested in that. Politics has become a dirty word, but it shouldn't be.
Shouldn't.
It's about people. It's about serving. And you represent us. And you take our needs and our desires, and you represent that. And I think that gets lost in all the muddy water, and
There's a lot of noise.
Yeah.
There's a lot of competing interests, and the politics of today are different than the politics when we were there. So he had gotten out in 2012 was the last year he was in, and how things are done now, and Facebook didn't exist. It was very new in 2012, right? There was no Instagram. There was no Twitter. Our offices still had fax machines in them because that's the way the state worked. Is
The library still has a fax machine. Too.
right?
Yeah.
And so it was a little more analog. You know, I didn't get a state assembly email address until our final years there. It was that slow getting an actual. I felt like, well, I finally made it that I had an assembly email address, you know, but for the first, I don't know, 11, 12 years of being there, staff didn't have email.
wow. And so, speaking of staff, you were the chief of staff, and that ran from what, 99 to 2012? Is that okay? Yep. What is a day in the life of a chief of staff? What
depends
did you
on where
do?
we're at. So we had district office.
Okay.
And we had our district office here in Warsaw, and then we had in Albany a capital office too. So when they were in session, and they're in session typically Monday through, depending on the time of year, which is really running from January 1 to about June is the session calendar, and it intensifies right around the budget process. So right now, if I don't know if you've seen on TV, they're talking about like, well, the legislative leaders and everyone's talking more and whatever. It's because they have to have the budget done by April 1st, technically.
Yeah.
And so it does heat up. So they go from like 3 days a week to all of a sudden 4 days a week, because they still have like to get back in their districts for at least a day. So we go down and it depends on the day. Sort of Tuesdays were always lobby day, so that's when all the groups come through. So you the meeting sheet, it's every 15 minutes. Some, whether it's people from your district are coming in, or special interests are coming in, busloads of people from New York City are coming in, and so the staff would meet with them, the member would meet with them. It depended on how you kind of worked it out, but it was just listening to everyone's points because everyone's coming in to lobby for their place in the state budget, right? So it was really interesting because you get to meet all kinds of people with everything that they wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty wild. So again, certain days it was just meeting after meeting after meeting, listening, taking notes, and then other times it was preparing schedules, working on legislation, committee schedules, and then doing constituent work, because we had, and so it was coordinating the two offices and not duplicating effort, but kind of keep it, what is this office doing and what is that office doing? Because, Dan would go back and forth. I would go back and forth sometimes, but did a lot of the work in the district office. And that was, I have to say, one of the best parts of the job is helping people, because people come to they contact their state legislator because they have a problem, some issue, some problem, with the state, they can't get a benefit they're supposed to get, they're not getting something fixed, a road, whatever it could. you never knew what it was. You had to be very adaptable. And then we would kind of reach out to state agencies or wherever we could to kind of run interference and get people answers. And that's outside of the people writing every day for, they're opposing this bill or they're pro that bill or whatever. So we were answering all those too. And that was before, again, email. So we were getting handwritten letters and, it was again, that whole thing changed,
Yeah.
In the course of from 99 to 2012, that it went from a lot of letter heavy intensive paper to things started to come in more by email to the member's address. And then
even Zoom meetings probably now.
They didn't exist then.
Right.
Like none of that existed. So it was very, you talked to everyone on the phone and
you enjoyed it. I mean, you had.
I did.
For it,
I really liked that. And again, the stories that we had, and I would have loved to have saved all the records. We had filed rows of records of people that we corresponded with or helped. I mean, helping a little girl who was being denied a wheelchair, a power wheelchair, because she had cerebral palsy. She couldn't ambulate or anything. So her family was just up against it, and no one would help them. And being able to run interference and work with Medicaid and get this little girl this wheelchair, and then so she could go to school. I mean, it was just a simple, but so for us, it was working through those processes to help her get the approvals and things that she needed. And then to see at the very end that she got it and she got to go to school. Like,
that's great.
That's why you do what you do. You know what I mean? So that above and beyond, writing bills and passing budgets, when you can help people on the ground in your district, that's where it really, you're like, wow, you had an impact. You did something for somebody, Yeah. And that's the way you make state government work for people. You're really impacting their lives. I remember Dan was able to get money for a bridge that had been years. There were these two ladies down in Allegheny County that had been lobbying for years to get a bridge replaced. It was out, and they had to drive, the community for ambulance service or anything had to drive country roads way out. It was like a 10-minute trip. So like an ambulance, if they had a problem from one side of the community to the other, had to go way out and around. And Dan was able to get secure funding to get that bridge reopened, and it suddenly connected the community again. Those are the kind of things that, they have an impact.
Yeah.
They have meaning to people's lives. And,
tax dollars going to something that people care about.
And it's nice to be able to bring, we send a lot of money away, but it's our job then is to bring it back, and help people.
What's the process of something like that? So there was a need there for this bridge, and it was brought to your attention. What's the process that they have to go through, and that you have to go through after you know the need? Does it have to be voted on? Does it have to be passed?
So at the time, there was something called multimodal dollars. So Dan was actually, because of relationships, he was actually able to work with the governor, who was then able to appropriate money into the budget process to then get that money directed to the DOT to help them, so you could point money in the direction needed to go.
Okay.
Another one was up at Route 63. There were some places on 63 that were very, very dangerous, had many car accidents, and Dan was able to get money from the governor through the DOT, and actually the Peoria curve. It used to be now it's much straighter if you go through there. That was a project that he was able to do. So just literally saving lives, fixing a problem that, people individually couldn't get, people recognize, but you've got to get somebody in a position with enough authority to be able to take it to a place that can get it done. And it isn't necessarily things that works through budget processes necessarily, but it's relationships and
coordination between the different factions.
And knowing how to do it, because it's again, New York State is a very complex system entity.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the state constitution, U.S. Constitution fits on one page, 3 articles, Bill of Rights. The U.S. Constitution, or the New York Constitution, is one of the oldest because it's one of the original 13, and it's thick. It's a book, and it can be amended much easier than the U.S. Constitution can, but it governs all aspects of your life.
Yeah.
Everything, every day. I always like going into the participation in government classes and saying which which affects your lives more, the U.S. Constitution, we think, rights and all these things. Or I said, or state constitution, New York State. And they all, it's always the federal government, always the federal. I'm like, do you have a license? Do you have insurance? All these things that it's the state, your business licenses, all that. It's the state of New York. So, navigating it, weeding through it, and to help people. It shouldn't be that complex.
Yeah,
but
it is. It is. Right. There's a lot of layers, but it's important that we know this. A lot of people don't understand how this works, and they just think it's a dead end. What's the use? Nothing's going to get done. But it's good to see when there is a need out there and the need is met. There's something tangible, and I think it encourages those people that. Put their time and effort into voting and into participating in the community and in government. So that is good. And it's good to know how that all works. Because again, if a lot of people are like me, you just kind of don't know where to start, where to go, and how this all works. So why even participate? Why even go to the voting booth, And so
it matters.
It matters.
It really matters.
Yeah.
I mean, single votes can swing elections. People may not think that, but it's true.
Especially at this level.
The lower level you go, the more impact it actually has.
Slimmer the margins.
Right. People can win 2 or 3 votes to make it, village election, town election, countywide election, and on it goes. And the funny thing is, the system of government that we have is interesting, that people think that one level is always, if it's above, is the boss of the level below. And it's not. The 3 branches of government and the separations and the checks and balances exists at every level, right? So at the village, we have courts, we have an executive, we have a mayor, and we have a village board of trustees, which is the legislative. The town has the same supervisor, councilman, justice courts. The state, you have state representatives in the Assembly and Senate. You have a state court of appeals, the highest court, and then you have the executive, the governor. Take it out to the federal, it's the same president, Congress, and the Supreme Court. So from the lowest level to the highest level, we have the same exact form of government. It's representative government, but not one branch is necessarily the boss of another, right?
Right.
Branch and level. So, a lot of people would call our office from the state assembly and think that, well, we're going to call a town councilman or a town board and say, you must do this.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, not really.
Yeah.
We can ask and we can talk and we can see what we can do, but you can't necessarily boss somebody around, right? You're not their boss. And like a congressman can't call a town supervisor and say, oh, hey, you got to do this. Well, it's not the way it works.
Yeah.
It's, again, we have to work together.
Sure.
We have to talk.
And really bottom up, like
it's bottom up.
Just the way that people tend to think of it.
Yeah. And that is again, genius
Right.
of founding fathers, right? Yeah. That it is literally grassroots, so a village board can pass a resolution and say, we want to something, and then we can ask, a state representative. And in New York, we have home rule, so it's a little different than in other states too, so we can ask for things from the state legislature, and then the state carries it, and then we can pass it at the local level. It's different than some states don't allow that. So it's a unique thing here in New York.
It's interesting. So let's move on. So you chief of staff, there's this little snippet of 3 years of Gardner Public Affairs Consulting.
Oh, so
a little bit about that.
So I created that, that is like 2012, I think. So I created that because I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do either after when Dan retired. I was, he retired and I retired, right? Because you work for the member and you work at the pleasure of the member. I was not a union employee. I did not work. I worked solely at the discretion of that member. So I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do. So I started that so I could do some political consulting, campaign consulting, a little business consulting too, in between. And I've kept it. I actually still have it. It still exists. Just as a DBA that I can operate out of if I need to. So I had some clients here and there and helped people along the way. So, yep, that's another that's another thing that happened in between.
Yeah.
But here you are now. Right now you are, and we'll skip over a few things. There's the Wyoming Foundation that you're a chairman of. Is that still existing, or?
Yeah, that's the celebrated. We'll celebrate next year. It's 50th year.
Oh wow. Okay.
So it's a long-standing foundation that I've been very honored to be a part of since mid 2000s, I think.
And what is their goal? What do they do?
So it's back 2008, it affiliated with the Community Foundation of Greater Buffalo. So it was a standalone foundation, and foundations are basically combinations of funds. So it affiliated with the Community Foundation of Greater Buffalo and became a subdivision for management and investment of its foundation assets. What it does is, so it still exists as the Wyoming Foundation. We just get the great benefit of our investments being with a much larger pool of investments that generate much more impact, or the ability to have impact in Wyoming County. It has, so if people are interested in setting up a bequest or setting up a fund when someone either passes away or during their lifetime, they can do that and direct it towards a charitable purpose. So we have a number of funds under our umbrella that have, some people do it to support libraries or for scholarships, or maybe to support an organization that they like, and we provide the vehicle for that.
Okay.
And then we have a period during the year when we do we solicit donations, and then we do grant making as well. So we can, I think last year we gave away to community organizations like $30,000.
Okay.
Small grants, 500 here, they go up to 5,000. So it's been very rewarding. Again, it's a way to help people.
Sure.
It's a little bit different than the other stuff I do, but it's for sort of, we've always focused on youth education, adult education, literacy, and community impact projects is what we're looking for. And we really had some exciting things happen. Some affiliation and relationship of late with the Ralph Wilson Foundation, and to expand some of the impact that we're allowed to have, or not allowed to have, but we can do greater things with it. So that's been kind of an exciting in the last year.
How would somebody get a hold of those funds, or how would they? Is this something that somebody would request, or maybe you guys say, here's a need, and then you kind of direct it?
So we typically have a grant. So some of the funds are directed. So if you had set one up for something very specific, there's processes that it just happens. So if it's like a scholarship, every year it comes up, there's this much available, application process. For the grant making that we do, we have an application process that we open up, and then 501c3s, charitable organizations can apply if they fit within the guidelines, the criteria, and then we review them, and then we make the awards.
I see.
Yeah, so it's fairly, it's not an overly complicated application, but as long as it fits within the criteria that
and you kind of open that up, so you announce that and you open it up to the community.
Yeah,
and
we do that in April. We will have another round that we do, and then applications will come in, and then I think about June we make the announcements of what was selected. So, and again, the impact is it's just wonderful to be able to help, local libraries, other nonprofits in the community. It's a way to be a part of that process and help people give back, and help set up funds in perpetuity. So you have to have so much in order to do it, because the point is we want to create it so it lasts. It isn't just a one-time shot. So we want to create something that you create a legacy that, for whatever it is that you want to support, and we always like to use in perpetuity, which means forever, so that, you set up enough so that even if it's $500 a year, your legacy is going to last, whatever it is that you wanted to help. I mean, I helped a church I used to go to set up a fund that we were not able to do very much with because it was just in CDs. And so we were able to take the principal, put it in, and then invest it with that larger pool, like I mentioned, and now there's a few $1,000s every year to be able to give, and it's very specific. So this one was written, the person who set it up for missionary or mission or ministerial work.
Okay.
So it's typically gone to help people in seminary, and if we can give them $500, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, that might help them with their books or whatever. And it goes right to the institution to help cover costs. So that's just one fund in the big umbrella of many funds. But it's nice to use a real story about how it's helping, but it's honoring a purpose that a man set up in the name of his parents. 40 years ago or better.
Yeah, wow.
And it will live on forever. I mean,
right, yeah.
It's really exciting that, I mean, you're able to help people with that piece, and then you're able to carry on their good works into a future that's long past them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now here we are. You're the president and CEO of the Wyoming County Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
And that is your full-time gig at this point.
Right.
However, you do have a little side gig, and it's called the deputy mayor. Is that correct?
I also do that, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the Wyoming County Chamber. You've been doing it for a very long time. It's been very helpful, very successful from what I understand and can see. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the chamber has over 500 members. It's countywide. Its purpose is to promote and grow small business in Wyoming County, and all the businesses in Wyoming County are small businesses. So even the near 50 manufacturers that we have in the county are small businesses. I mean, they don't become big businesses like 500 employees or more.
Right.
So the only big ones we had at one time were like the Pioneer Credit. Those did well over 1,000 employees.
If cows counted as employees, there would be some pretty big businesses. In there.
And agriculture is big business in Wyoming County. Kid you not, But yeah, if we have more cows than people, so right. And if they voted, we'd be all set, right? We'd be a loud voice in the middle
New
of
York
Western
City would
New
be
York.
nothing.
They would be nothing if our cows voted. But so that's the basic. I mean, we're here to help promote and grow Wyoming County. Advocate. Another thing, businesses will contact us if they have problems, and with me at the helm, I know how state government works and things. So I've helped a lot of businesses with things like licensing or problems within state government. Can contact a representative and get people back. Get someone from an agency, say, back with a business owner if they need it. So
it's a really good resource.
Yeah, and I don't know if everybody knows that all the time, but there's a lot of things we do.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of things we do that people don't know. That we talk to a lot of the businesses on a regular basis, and we have some that are frequent flyers. They call all the time and with thoughts and ideas, and just some want to talk, and so we're there to do that too. I mean. So in a lot of ways, it's very similar to what I did before.
Yeah.
But in a much more focused, it's just Wyoming County now. It wasn't 6 counties.
Right.
And it's the business community. But our business community is our community.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
it doesn't
kind of where we
all.
started.
It's not separate silos, and it's not in a vacuum. I mean, our business owners live in our communities. Our businesses are important to our communities. So it all connects. Because what's good for something over here is good for the people over here. If it's good for a downtown and a main street, it's enhancing the quality of life for the people that live there. So it's all connected.
You've worn the same clothes since you were in 4th grade.
I haven't had to change outfits because it's all the same.
Yes, yeah.
Right. So it's for good, and that's what I've enjoyed about it. And then we have the tourism program as another piece of that, and that's a whole other. That's attracting and bringing people to the county because we want to bring revenue to the county.
Right.
Sure. The more that we can bring in, the better off we, the resident taxpayers, are too. Right. Because it helps with sales taxes, it helps with bed taxes, and even beyond taxes, it's helping the circulation of money in the community. Right. So when people stop here and they buy coffee and food, they're helping your business be successful they're paying taxes, and that you're paying taxes as a business on a main street. Like it all works. We can't separate one from the other.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And what is the state of our business community? What do you see right now? Where are we? And also, what could we do to enhance it and make it better? What do you think?
well, I think the state of our business community is good, because again, it's made up of you, right? Of us, of people. And, it's always exciting. Spring brings new businesses, right? So it's nice to see people kind of starting new things, opening new storefronts. There's always a churn. I mean, that's the thing about the small business community too, is it's always changing. It's never the same. Some come, some go. It is what it is. It's the nature of it. People start businesses for their own reasons. They leave businesses for their own reasons, right? I think it's vibrant. I think there's always opportunity to grow it. And if the communities that the businesses are in are also have an eye on that, I think it helps encourage them to grow and want to start here. And because you want confidence in the area that you're in to know that it's a place that you'd want to start a business, right? So I think some of our communities that are investing in their downtowns, main streets, I think it's encouraging businesses to start up and open. That's something unique in Wyoming County. I mean, I've seen it other places too, for sure, but we are independent people, and we've got some great small businesses. We've got some great assets to help those small businesses. Again, at the Ag and Business Center, we have things like the Fast Track program, which and the Accelerated Canterbury and the Mentorship program that are set up to kind of get people off the ground, give you good education, good core information, and then help you along the way, right? Because businesses can be strengthened by others. I mean, the lessons you learned, you can share with a startup business, and it isn't necessarily. I think some people think it's competition, but more is better.
Yeah,
you can work off of each other and
I
play.
think Tammy
off of
mentioned
each other.
that too.
Yeah, and you can strengthen each other. you
Well,
know?
that's debatable.
I mean, we hope,
Yeah.
but more assets that are in a town or in a community,
Right.
theoretically should bring in more people
Yes,
to
yes.
experience those assets.
But it has to be unique.
Ideally.
There has to be some uniqueness to new business.
Right.
And if you're opening up businesses that aren't unique, it's the same thing that the tourist or whoever's traveling through, whoever's coming to the community.
They'll see them in every community they go to.
Is so
Yeah.
I think to your point and to Tammy's point, yes and no. I think if I was to open up an ice cream shop next door, that probably wouldn't be the best thing to do.
Right. Right.
So, we just got to be careful with that, I think, especially within a small community and a small village. When it comes to, I would love to see more businesses on Main Street, on the side 20A here.
Yeah. Sure.
I think we have room for that.
We do.
But they have to be different. They have to be
Complementary.
There we go.
Complementary
Thank
is
you.
good rather than competitive.
Yeah.
Complementive. Yeah.
So, like a couple nice villages that I love to go to. One is East Aurora. Beautiful main street, unique shops. They are large enough to have a couple of the same shops in the area.
Sure. Right.
The other one is Ellicottville. Beautiful main street they have, and
they're very well positioned.
Yeah.
But I think we are very well positioned as well because
We are.
of the travel that we get through 28. Yeah. I mean, it's not like they want to; they have to come through here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
We smooth it out; it'll even be better, right?
yeah, exactly.
seriously.
20 is a nightmare right
It
now.
is. So, Yeah,
we want to slow them down and capture them, and then give them something.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
what the
reason.
hill's for. Yeah,
That's right. But give them something to stop, pause.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is, the businesses need to be unique, interesting, and welcoming.
Yeah, well presented.
Right. Like that's a critical thing, because it's about attraction. I mean, it's like bees to flowers. I mean, you have to have something that makes people want to go there.
That's a great point.
And because people are creatures, they're animals, and they see, it's new and exciting. They want to go. They gravitate towards that, or it's different. I mean, you fly your Canadian flag. I mean, you're showing that you're welcoming to a subset of visitors.
Yeah,
because you know that they're coming through and they see it.
That was news to me. Like I was so shocked when I started here to find out the percentage of customers that are coming either from New York City or from Canada. Toronto and New York City are not the customers that you would imagine when you're starting a small business in Warsaw, right? Like
not necessarily,
but they're coming through here. So
if you see, if you sit out there and go, if I can capture these people somehow and give them something that they want and need and can use, and that enhances their trip or whatever, then you've provided that your distinct competitive advantage that they teach you.
So I was thinking of starting a car wash or two right here. I'm just kidding. Everywhere you go,
I think you put another
car
tire or frame adjustment place based on the travel right now. But it is, and understanding that, we have, I know they've put new trackers in over at the park, but almost 1 million people a year coming to Letchworth State Park. I mean, we have that. So it's not necessarily sitting right near the village of Warsaw. Even the village of Perry, I mean, it's offset from it a little bit, but we know that they're coming through and they're coming to. Yeah. And so it's how do we pull them, in what ways can we attract them back out when they're looking for something? Now, a certain number of them are going to go there and that's what they're there for, right? Like, I'm going to go camp. You got, coolers full of the food that you need, and that's where they're at, and they're not moving, right? They want to, but there's a lot of people that come, and you're day trippers, or they maybe spend a weekend, and they want other things to do, so because you can do the park in a day or two. I mean, depends on how much you're, I go there for the Glen Iris. Right. I've seen the fall, you know what I mean? For me, it's a nice place to go and visit. But for some people that have never seen it, I mean, I love taking people, and you've probably done it, taking people that have never been there, and they're like, whoa. Yeah. And I'm like, it is a big canyon, right? And it's got all these waterfalls. And, I love taking, we've had, we bring people in very specifically, or if you have like guests or somebody coming in and you take them over and you keep telling them what it is. But until they see it, and they can enjoy it. And then there's things to do while you're in it. I mean, you can take a hot air balloon ride, or stay at the Glen Iris, or eat at the Glen Iris, or you can go hiking or rafting. Or you can do rafting, so but
then when you're done, where are you going to get a cup of coffee?
Well, and right. And you're in, because you're not going to get that there. Now, if you had put, if that park was created in such a way that, the village of Warsaw was within it, I mean, you'd have coffee shops up and down the streets and little restaurants. And so it is to try and attract them back out, so Wyoming County is a safe place. It's a family friendly place. And we want to bring people back out to do things like the Arcade and Attica Railroad, to go to Hidden Valley Animal Adventure. Maybe they're staying at Silver Lake, to go boating on the lake. There's a lot of other things really, truly outside of the park to do. It's just tapping into that existing, population. And the ones that aren't there locked in, like, this is where we're going to stay. You want to get them out.
Should start a fishing charter thing.
Well, he's talked about like 100%. Something like that, or a tackle shop fishing thing. Dude. Here's something also I want to mention about travelers is that, yes, we want them, they've got a destination. Let's say they're going to the park. But while this is like an in-between. This is like, I've had people say, this is like an oasis. We've been traveling for an hour now, and this Warsaw is, so when they stop, to be able to give them other opportunities to walk to, and make this a place to where they stay and then they go to the park during the day, and then they come back here because they know that they can come back here. They have a nice place to stay in, and they have shops that they can walk around to at night or even during the afternoon or whatever. I think getting them to come back out of the park is going to be, it happens, but it's going to be a little bit more challenging than getting them for when they do pit stop here to have more places that they can hit for the next hour or two, however long they're going to be hanging out here. Right. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. It's just how can we attract those small businesses to open shop here?
So we at the Village, so there's, again, all things are complementary, and I
like the complementary
all of
part
it
of it,
at the same time, right? So from economic development, watching, okay, how do we do that? How do we help, businesses? How do we help local communities? So the Village, and again, we can't do the thing that the Village must do, right? So communities have to do certain things themselves. We can help, we can guide, but we can't just come in and we don't have
invent different businesses.
Well, we can't. Well, we don't have this the structural ability to do it, right? I mean, there's certain things. So the Village of Warsaw recently invested in bringing a consultant in to help with downtown revitalization, because that hasn't happened in a long time, in spite of all the work that people like you have done to make your business what it is, right? And it takes that municipality thinking that way. So Perry has had a very deliberate approach to doing that. And that's why things look like they do in downtown. And they're going to continue to, because they really haven't even spent the $10 million that's coming for that downtown. And it's very concentrated in a very compact area. Warsaw's a little behind on that, to be honest. I mean, and it shows. And we have to start somewhere. And so one of the things we did is brought the consultant in to start looking at business, or your downtown business stock, your storefronts, and the first round. So we've got, I think there's 9 that were targeted from the initial meeting, and to look at what they can do. And it's about creating, where you can, second floor housing. So your market rate. So you've got people interested in living downtown, and then putting retail on the first floor, because there should be no residential on a first floor in a downtown.
Yeah. And
we've seen some instances where that's happened, and it shouldn't be, because it's taking away from the ability to have a functioning business on their downtown, to bring people, it's about walkability, and it's the visual. So we've got the initial project that's going to help, I think, the 9 that have been targeted, and then we're going to apply for grant funding in July, so that hopefully we get an announcement by November, and then you can start some of these projects. It's a very similar process to where Perry started, almost 10 years ago or more. But you have to start.
Yeah,
sure.
And then you get that inertia going, where another business says, "Oh, geez, I think I want to invest down there, because I see that there's people down there."
Right.
And, it can grow, and so, but you got to get it moving.
Yeah.
You really got to get it.
Yeah. You know what makes Warsaw different from Perry is that Perry is not getting the travelers we're getting, because they get cut off.
Yeah.
So they're coming through Warsaw, then they're going through Mount Morris to get back onto the highway.
Yep.
So Perry is missing the thousands and thousands of travelers.
Just the traffic.
They're missing
the
that.
fact that it exists.
Yeah. So if we could, and I see some of the unique shops that Perry has, and they would do a lot better if they had the travel we had going through here. So if we could just capture some of those business ideas,
right,
and put them here.
So our advantage is that different. Yeah. So every community has their own different advantage, right?
Right.
And we need to capitalize on this. I'm pointing.
Yeah. Main Street.
On Main Street.
Yeah.
That we have that Perry is there's some of their advantages proximity to the park, which is 4 miles away, and so it's capitalizing on your strengths.
Yeah.
And so here, I mean, and interestingly, 20A has, we can see a lot of traffic, but 19 has almost as much. Oddly enough, believe it or not,
Interesting.
it's got a lot of north-south traffic on it. So to your point, we have 2 major arteries
Yeah.
that we need to be capitalizing on.
Sure.
And so, I don't think it's going to look like it did when I was, back a kid in the 80s, but, what could it look like moving forward? And so, you've done some of that even here. You've got your Airbnb upstairs, and then there's another one on 19. There's 2 actually that seem to be doing well. And what we want to do is continue to grow that second floor residential, because the businesses need people supporting them also when the traffic is not coming through as much, right? 'Cause
Yes.
you need,
Yes.
we as a community have to support these businesses on the off season or at the
100%.
downtimes as well.
Well, Scott, we all know, unfortunately, I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know. I don't want to say anything bad here, but what lives on the second floor on Main Street isn't attractive.
Well, and that's why you have to be deliberate and very conscious about what and how you're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to look at, what is the resource, the building, and we have some of the most beautiful, historic, in most cases, well-preserved buildings, in the area. I mean, when consultants come in and they marvel at our building stock, what do we got to do to make it better? Right?
Yeah.
What do we have to do to make it so that people actually want to live downtown?
Yeah.
Make it what's convenient. What do they need? And then you can start to bring in the unique thing, the first floor business that meets the needs of the people living residentially. And I mean, so much of Warsaw you can walk to.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it doesn't take very long to, say from the school to downtown to any of
park,
the side streets, the park. I mean, it's a quick walk.
So
quick bike ride.
So one of the things would be to get in some of the owners of the buildings. We know who owns a majority of them, but is now beginning to sell off. So as he's selling off, is making contact with these new owners, and I'm sure there's got to be some grants out there for them to renovate the upper, because some of the upper parts of these buildings where some of these people have lived,
they're in rough shape.
I had to do a lot of renovations,
extensive rehab.
Yeah.
So, and it's worth it,
Right.
because you're going to attract better tenants,
Right.
And
there's historical tax credits too for some of these buildings that if you're going to make the investment that you can get.
okay,
So there are other things that may be available depending on the size, the scale, and what you're putting in to do that. And that's why we brought consultants in to help, because what can we do to encourage these building owners to do that? I mean, and in some cases, and that's where we're looking for grant funding. And again, one thing begets another.
Sure.
Like, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So Warsaw back, early 2000s, and again, purely by happenstance, Dan, the assemblyman, was roommates with the head of the Main Street program in New York. They stayed at the U Club down in Albany, and it was like a dormitory. They didn't have their own bathrooms. It was shared. I mean, this place, it sounds fancy, like the U Club. It was like college dorm.
Yeah. Very communal.
Very communal. But they just happened to be there, and Dan had a conversation. This is how relationships work like that. Had a conversation with the guy, and $100,000 came to Warsaw's downtown just like that.
Oh, wow.
And it started some of the initial work, some of the buildings that some very early adopters had done, but that was now 20 years ago. And then a second round came through, and that helped another set of buildings. And then some building owners did their own paint and kind of worked on their facades. But again, it's the guts of those buildings that to help, right? You know, I mean, making your downtown look nice is critical. And I think there's a lot of people in our community that want that. And,
Sure.
and I think they have some good ideas to do it. But we may not have the resources to help the way that people would like or want. So it's about trying to find that. So again, like I say, one thing begets another. So this initial project is going to set up an ability to get some projects off the ground and let people see what can be done. And then they're also building an inventory for future rounds so that we can do more.
Okay.
Because once the state starts to see that you're working on a project and you are making better and you're making headway and the investment is starting to come, then the state will invest more.
They want to be a part of the success story.
They do.
Like getting
They
a
do.
wheelchair and getting the girl to school.
Right. And this is big. I mean, these are
Yeah.
$500,000
Right.
grants.
Yeah.
These are, they can be transformative. And then you can set yourself, so you start this way, and then you set yourself up for the New York Forward applications, which is, $2.5 million, or the DRIs, which is the $10 million.
Yeah.
And so the state saw the value in setting up these rounds, these programs, so that you can bring in, because $250,000, $100,000 can only go so far,
Right.
especially in today's financial climate, right, and the cost of materials and all that. So the state said, okay, we're going to make some targeted, they might only have 4 or 5 New York Forwards, like $2.5 million, but $2.5 million you can do a lot with. You've got the projects lined up, the investment ready.
Yeah.
And you can make
10
it
times.
happen.
Yeah.
Right. So this, because you're leveraging more than that's. I'm not just giving you $2.5 million. That is leveraging typically much more investment behind it. So, and that's with the DRI project in Perry. That $10 million isn't just here's $10 million, spend it as you will. Each one of those, there's a whole catalog of projects that are lined up that they prepped. They did a lot of work to get them ready for investment. So you're actually, I don't know if it's going to double the amount of investment, but you're leveraging the 10 million for much, much more.
Yeah.
So that's the trick in how to do it.
So right now, for those, if there's people out there that might be listening that, are looking to start a business or have some ideas, who would they contact? How would they go about maybe applying for a grant or just getting in touch with somebody to help them?
Well, it's good that we know
business
too.
building.
If somebody's thinking about it or wants to talk about it, it's good that we know, so they can contact the chamber, they can contact the business center, one or the other, and we'll, we may not be able to just. There's not just like here's money,
but you can get them directed and started.
And it's good to know. I mean, if there's interest, and we have a list of businesses that are interested in coming, or people that want to do things, that gives us kind of the ammunition or the ability to then say, okay, well, we get enough of these together, you get the right critical density, or you can then make an application, or it's worth getting a consultant to now build a proper application to then see if the state can help fund some of it.
Gotcha.
Whether it's matching or whatever it may be. But I mean, if you have a $200,000 project and you put in 100 and you can get 100 from the state, or 50, whatever.
Yeah.
That can go a long way.
Yeah.
And you can really then you'll start, again, it's the snowball effect.
Sure.
And you can start to see some real change on your main streets. But again, it takes time.
Yeah.
And
I got to say, I love the community here in Warsaw. I enjoy what's happening here. I look forward, though, to some more.
Snowball.
Yeah, some more.
Right.
I think we have a beautiful village in the valley. It's beautiful here, and so thank you for sharing all that. And
sure, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot in that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of high level, broad.
Sure.
Perspective on what's happening right now.
Well, let's talk about what's happening with you, because you are in the running. Are you yet? Are you on the ticket yet, or
not? Quite
not?
Yet.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that. What's happening there? If you want to, if you don't want to, that's fine.
No, I so I've been interested in running. It's the county clerk's race. I've been interested in that particular position for better than 10 years. And the opportunity is right. And so I wanted to run for it. So right now literally right now, you have to get enough signatures to get on the ballot. New York makes it very difficult to run for office. Go figure, it's New York. We don't make anything easy.
Yeah.
And so you have to get enough signatures, and then you can qualify to get on the ballot, and then you run.
Okay.
And so there'll probably be a primary. And
What's your deadline, and how many more signatures do you need?
oh gosh, I'm making some good headway.
Okay.
I think I need 70 left.
Okay.
Out of the 500. So that's exciting. And it's a lot of door to door. I've done it, and the deadline's April 3rd to answer your question. But
Okay.
I've done it, a lot of it just going out door to door, which is a great way to campaign, but meet people
Sure.
and get a look at the community, because I haven't just done it in the village of Warsaw, so I've gone everywhere to do it.
And are you hopeful you'll get those 70 by then?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, sure.
I'll get them.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not worried about that. But
Okay.
it's a long haul to get them. I mean, you have about a month to go out and get them, and when you start, you're like, oh,
And
that's easy.
you have to have the physical signatures, right?
Physical
You have to,
signatures.
yes.
Like
okay.
you have to go to people and you have to sign and
Yes.
Yep. So there's what you do then is you create. So I used to do this for Dan when he ran. Is you create a book out of all the pages and you bind it and you number them and then you turn that into the Board of Elections, and that's what gets you on the ballot to qualify.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he used to district of his size. I had well over 2,000
Wow.
signatures
Wow.
or more at a time.
Do you have anybody doing some footwork for you, or is it just you out there?
I'm doing a lot of it, but I do have people helping. So
Okay.
I'm very appreciative for
Well,
everyone that is.
to our community out there, if you see some sharp dressed man, which everybody knows already who it is, knock on your door to interrupt your dinner, it's just Scott. He
just
just needs
me.
some signatures. That's
Just
all.
a dynamic guy.
And he's probably got his satchel with him, right?
Yeah.
I have at times
Yeah.
carrying pens, water, extra things, because you're out there like a camelback.
Yeah.
And go out and but it's been a great process because you hear a lot of what's on people's minds.
Sure.
And I think it's fascinating, just that part of it. Meeting a lot of people I don't know yet, because our community has changed.
Sure.
You know what I mean? A lot of the people that I knew when I was a kid, they passed on, and there's different people in their houses and things like that. And I guess that's just the way it's always been is, there's always churn. There's always new people. There's always new, which brings ideas and wants and needs and all those things. So it's been a very interesting process. I've heard a lot of people very upset about that whole issue with the corrections officers, and like it's top of mind, and people that are very upset about that. And there's not a lot I can do. I mean, the Village of Warsaw, we passed a resolution supporting the COs in it, and understanding what they're having to deal with. But it's been very interesting listening.
Oh, I'm sure. And so you have to have some patience, because, you're going around, you're knocking for signatures, and then you get that one guy that wants to sit down for 3 hours and tell you all the problems that are happening in Warsaw and surrounding areas.
Everywhere. It doesn't matter. It isn't just here. It's whatever's happening anywhere, and anything they got in their mind, because somebody that came to the door, I wanted something, and they're going to get something in return.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I've some houses I've been an hour, 2 hours. Some it's been I've caught up with people that I haven't seen in a while, and that's been really nice.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to listen to what people have to say.
Sure.
And I it's all perspective. I mean, everybody's got something going on, and I want to hear it. Because it makes you a more effective representative. If at least, if you go around a community and you hear one major issue, well, that's the one that's on people's minds. But you also hear things that you didn't expect to hear, and I think that's a good part of it too. Is that you're learning, and I like to learn. You're always learning something new.
Yeah.
So that's been rewarding. In doing
And as far as the county clerk position, now, what are the responsibilities for that? What would you be doing in that type of position?
Well, again, as the clerk, you're the top administrative officer there, and it's a constitutional ministerial role. There's only a few countywide. In Wyoming County, there's only a few countywide actual offices that we have, and the clerk is one. It's a constitutional. And it's everything from record retention for the court system, and processing things like pistol permits, passports, recording mortgages and deeds, and so things like that, business licenses, and then you also run the DMV as well.
Okay.
So and one of those things, shopping local, doing your transactions here. And we're fortunate we have a good DMV, right? It's people come from other places to use ours because again they're like us. They're
I gotta shout them out. I had this whole thing with my car. I got a out
You were
of
like
state.
visiting it every day.
Literally, we all, the whole office and me celebrated when it got through.
Right.
I had an
So
out
there
of
you go.
state salvage title, and it got lost in the mail. I got it back to them. It was wrong because I'm bad at paperwork, and then I had to do it again. And it was
Right.
literally 10 months from when I purchased the car in South Carolina to get it up here and get
Wow.
it to get a title. But this office was not part of that. Not part of any of those issues.
No,
Very
they're-
helpful.
right.
Got me in contact with the right people.
Sure.
Definitely. They're
Sure.
extremely helpful.
and it's about growing up in retail. It's about customer service.
Yeah.